This is our first ever virtual Torcum Talk episode. It is due to obvious circumstances, the fact that social distancing is something that the government is having us all do, and we are adhering to that. So that is why we're not in person, but both Gavin and Ben and Matt are from Bend, and can you guys introduce yourselves? Gavin, you first, please.
Sure. Gavin Burke. I recently moved to Bend with my family from New York about a little under 3 years ago. And I have a background in finance, 25 years in private capital, and currently have a fintech data business here in Bend, and have been involved in different projects with Matt when he introduced me to this issue that we were facing to nearly 3 weeks ago. We had a meeting, and that kicked off a number of different conversations which led to Sos Bend. But before we go into that, maybe Matt, you'd like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin, and thanks, Bud, for having us on. So Matt Abrams, I've been in Bend for about 20 years now. And spent my career 25 years or so in the enterprise software industry, from starting out back in DC and in government agencies in the data and analytics field, to startups in Silicon Valley, to big enterprise, and ultimately into venture capital, and spent the last 6 or so years helping build up and create an early stage venture capital fund, Seven Peaks Ventures. Recently moved on from that, but working with a number of different funds, startups, some large healthcare initiatives, and jumped into this because I think both Gavin and I saw the not only the immediate problem that was present and upfront for all of us in terms of what was happening to our small businesses, but we were all wondering, how do we help? How do we jump in and problem solve? And it took it from there.
And that actually, so when you reached out to me on helping get the word out on SOS Bend, which is basically something that will dive deeper in, that's going to help save a lot of Bend businesses. I actually wasn't that surprised that it came from you, Matt, and Gavin. I hear you're a fantastic person as well. But Matt and I, we've met a few times, and you've been a fantastic mentor, and you give all the time as much as you can, whether it's time or resources, without asking anything in return. And that's something that this site is, and there isn't any kind of monetary gain to both of you guys from doing this, and I knew that to be true, just knowing that it was coming from you. So getting into that, though, SOS Bend basically is something that we're hoping will be some seriously good medicine to help with what's going on, which is basically we're going into a depression. And what I'd like to jump in is kind of go back and forth with you guys right now on how real this depression sort of thing is, if you want to call it that. I mean, we may not be there yet, but if we stay on this road of the businesses having to be shut down and businesses having to close, that is exactly where we're going to end up being. So yeah, I was just wondering if any of you guys want to jump in and how can we paint the picture to people who this might not be affecting directly, like the people who aren't restaurant owners in Bend? Like, obviously those are most affected people that don't have those things, and they might be sitting on a bit of money and they're like, oh no, but I'll be fine.
I think I'll throw out, I think, a simple example on this, and that is, if we look at the services that are really doing well right now, and where many people who don't have a small business or in, for instance, the tech industry, like, hey, I'm good. So let's take Netflix or Zoom conferencing that we're on, so on and so forth. Netflix is going through the roof, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Everyone's doing on-demand streaming.
Mm-hmm.
But that on-demand streaming, the customers for Netflix are the same customers who ultimately own small businesses, are losing their jobs, so on and so forth. So there is no, my point to this, there is no safe haven. There's
No.
no safe haven in this economy at all in terms of the collapse, in part because the US economy has always been outlined as it's a consumer driven, consumer led economy. And unlike 2008, where 2008 was a Wall Street infrastructure, issue that originated there and trickled down into Main Street, this is first and foremost hitting Main Street first and moving up into Wall Street. And it's moving up at a pace, a velocity, and a volume that is frankly unprecedented. And Gavin, I mean, you've been in the banking industry for your entire career, so
Well,
fire away with your thoughts.
To your point, really quick, Matt, on like Netflix, for some cases it already is affecting. I'm sure the stock price is going up because everybody's streaming. But as I've gone through and basically saw where is my business fat when it comes to all these different vendors, and I noticed all these different things that we didn't really need. So I was cutting a lot of stuff. I was asking for some months off, things like that. And I got a lot of, by the way, business owners are looking at this. You can, like any of the tech decks that you're looking at that you're utilizing, any bills that you're having, they are actually all negotiable. Even if you don't have a number, just to go to the contact us section and ask. 90%, I actually think it's more than 90% of all of the businesses that Mazama uses did give us a break in one way or another. So going to the Netflix example really quick, I then did that personally. And I looked at all the things that I'm running and I was like, okay, I have Disney Plus, HBO Now, and Netflix. And I'm like, I barely have enough time to watch Netflix. So HBO and Disney got cut. And Netflix, by the way, it might get cut too, because I am more of a fan personally of reading. And my books aren't really being touched because I'm working my fucking ass off to keep my business going. So that could be the next thing goes as well. So I get what you're saying, and that does make sense how that will eventually end up hitting there. So sorry, Gavin, how are you seeing it affecting?
Sure. Well, clearly it's multifaceted. You have the tragic health crisis that many people have been impacted, but in terms of the economic damage, so we just had a massive heart attack, and a lot of people, because of the consequences of social distancing, have been kind of laid off or furloughed, and obviously the ripple effect on the economy in terms of all that money not being spent is very significant. And the scariest part of this is we don't know, even if the green light is given for reopening the economy and the lockdown released, we don't know what people's tendencies will be post this. We don't know whether they will be willing to continue to go out and spend in the same way that they did before.
I would imagine
So
if they're older, then they definitely would not.
I think there'll be a certain level of caution on different parts of the demographic. But so the immediate need is right now, because these businesses tend to have a relatively short runway in terms of cash in how they typically operate. And what we're trying to do is convey the message that if you're at home and you would normally have gone to these different businesses or you are availed of different services, that you can still do that, and you can still protect these businesses by engaging in purchasing credit now from them that you will redeem later on. And that generates significant financial relief in that they continue to pay their bills, they can continue to keep staff on, and in some circumstances continue to work and prepare different products or services, and then that redemption can kick in later. It does offer breathing space to allow these businesses to survive over this initial part of the dislocation that we're experiencing.
And speaking of what you're just talking about, the cash flow issue that the businesses don't really have, you guys shared with me this fantastic graph from Medium that goes over this. So for, again, people just trying to paint this picture, you can see on this is a cash buffer days on how much cash a business can basically survive, stay open until they have to cut it quits and close their doors, uh, and based on averages. And so the restaurants in Bend, which we all love, and you know that fills downtown our community. I think we have somewhere around 200 restaurants. It's the average is 16 days of no cash flow coming in that they end up closing. 16 days. And so we are, Bend ended up taking this seriously on the, well, as far as the Kate Brown, I believe that was on the 14th or 15th. Let's call it the 14th of March, I believe. And so now we are literally a month and 2 days later. And so here we're seeing that this cash crunch, these businesses are already in trouble. It's at 16 days is the average, and we're at 32. 18 days for repair and maintenance, 19 days for retail, those boutique shops that you love downtown, the bike shops that you love, your local ski shop, all these businesses that you love to support. There they are in trouble right there. Construction, that, I mean, all the homes you see going up, things of that nature, personal services, cleaning, haircuts, stuff like that. Wholesalers is 23 days. Healthcare services, that's an interesting one. You guys wouldn't mind touching on that. 30 days. And what is
just to drill in on the healthcare piece in there, on that note, this is the misnomer as well from our health system, and our, the U.S. healthcare. I don't want to go too far into this, but the U.S. healthcare system is a mess, as we are all confronted with. But our health system, so St. Charles, there was an article recently in terms of how much money St. Charles is losing. And most people don't understand that the average health system across the U.S. only runs on a 1.7% margin, and they are losing. For a median system, you're looking at $500 million wiped out because most of their revenue is coming from the elective procedures that they would otherwise do. So their revenue is gone. So and that has ripple effects in and of itself, which is why you're seeing this dichotomy of we need our healthcare workers now, but so many are also being furloughed.
So 1.7%, is that what you said?
1.7% margin for health systems.
You're right. So when it comes to the hospital, St. Charles specifically, they're in a lot of trouble because the government has forced them to can all elective surgeries. And
I wouldn't say, I would caution you, it's not. So the faster everyone's trying to do a V-shaped recovery on this, and we set up SOS Bend with the hopes of that, with the hopes of being able that this was temporary, that this was an emergency Band-Aid, which is why we call it SOS. And this is where I think people need to understand and recognize that the faster we do this and the faster we eliminate, the viral outbreak from the population and the chance of it resurging, the faster of an economic recovery. And so I want to push back in there, but when you articulate and say, hey, it's the government that's doing this, it's not the government, it's the virus.
Right.
So this is where, if you look at China, if you look at Singapore, if you look at South Korea, so forth, if you look at some of the European countries who quickly acted in terms of suppressing this, their economies are going to come back a lot faster. And if we can do that here, and I would argue that the West Coast states of the United States are in a much better position than certainly New York and others. If we can do that, and if we can open up more quickly, then SOS Bend is only needed for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's that circulation of cash that is critical, and there's so many people who are at home wanting to know what to do. How can I help? How can I alleviate some of this pressure? And the message we're conveying is continue to spend, continue to shop the way that you would have before to our local businesses, and maintain that circulation of cash until we can pull ourselves out of this.
So would either Matt or Gavin, would you guys mind sharing your screen to kind of give us a tutorial, and let's show the people what SOS Bend is? So we're hoping for this to be like, if we get enough people to use it and to actually take this seriously, this will end up injecting a lot of cash into our local economy, which is going to be important. Well, we were talking about this yesterday. As you guys are pulling up, can you touch on a bit on how this is how we're stakeholders to Bend and why it matters that money is staying here as opposed to Amazon and things of that nature?
Sure. The consequences of the circulation of money is it ripples through every part of the life here, and it's not obviously it's important about keeping these businesses open and employees continuing to receive a paycheck, but there are other consequences when revenue is depleted in the current environment. Tax revenue coming out of that is also impacted, and that has consequences on funding for different municipal services that we all enjoy. There's the consequences of valuation on property. There's the consequences of tourism coming down because businesses aren't open. There's a whole ripple effect on everyone in the community, and we have the capacity to solve that for ourselves. Each community to reinforce and gather around its own services and businesses to sustain that circulation of money, revenue generation, and all the consequences from that.
So how would this directly affect me me as what I'm trying to paint a picture of somebody who has a bit of income where they would be a bit safe from this. They're still able to operate their business. They still have a revenue that's coming in, and they're in Bend and they're in their house and they're like, okay, I see things are fine. Things are fine right now. This is kind of a bummer being stuck inside, but we're totally just gonna boop right after this because look at all, I mean, I still have some income and my business is still working. So this isn't really my problem.
Can I simplify it, I guess? And that is and this is a question for all of us, what makes, besides the outdoors and why we're here in Bend, what makes, walking around Bend special for us? What makes it cool? What makes it someplace that people want to come as well? What is it?
The culture, the shops, the breweries, things of that nature. Is that where you're going? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's not run down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have nice parks. We have, and that's from our water
schools.
Parks. We've got good schools. We've got nice buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We could argue as to whether or not our streets have been maintained with potholes, but all of those,
a bit better.
They're getting a bit better. all those depend upon that liquidity and that circulation of money that Gavin talked about, where if we don't have those things, then the value of our communities in every aspect decreases. And we end up seeing more issues with whether it's our schools go down, our personal property. If you own a house, that property valuation decreases because
but I'm gonna say, Matt, come on. The school's going down. Come on, that seems like a stretch.
Why would that be a stretch though? If you don't,
I'm asking you.
If you don't have teachers that you can afford to pay from our tax revenues, then you don't have kids who are able to learn. And obviously we're struggling right now in remote learning, but just even if we come back and it's in person, that entire circulation depends upon getting that liquidity into each aspect of a functioning society. You break that down, then you're throwing a wrench into the gears of our community systems. Mm-hmm. And it's why I brought up this graphic on the screen here. So we designed this very purposely for SOS Bend to help try to explain to folks that the dollar flow is so critical across the entire community. You throw a wrench in one aspect of it, it affects us all. We're all stakeholders in that.
An ecosystem. Okay, so in this ecosystem, okay, so I'm affected. I just want to kind of hit home on some more points on how is this affecting, these, because we have a lot of remote workers even before this happened, and working for businesses that aren't located here, even though the whole country is in trouble. So we have the schools where that can fall apart. What about the value of my home that I've invested so much money into? What happens to that?
Yeah, so there's clearly Bend benefits from a lot of tourism. It benefits from a lot of traffic that comes through the town, and if we see our businesses, particularly on the services side and food and beverage, take a significant hit because of this crisis, there's less options for people to come into Bend, and we want to maintain that choice. We want to maintain those attractive features of the town. But when you have a potential for, we saw it back in 09 when there was a lot less traffic, a lot less interest in secondary homes. The valuation of property took a meaningful hit. Now, that was a separate crisis because that was directly impacting the housing market and the construction around that. Nonetheless, the impact to real estate could be meaningful if the economy, the local economy, isn't generating the revenue that it used to before, and not sustaining the level of employment or the level of tourist dollars that come in. And it all percolates down to a need to maintain a level of spending that can sustain these local businesses.
So in essence, it could create a domino effect of like not only businesses going under, but an exodus of people leaving.
They have to. They're forced to.
Right.
I mean, people are forced to at the end of the day to survive, to take care of their own families. This is where whether it's the businesses where we see this cash buffer that we talked about, or talking about the average 40% of Americans don't have money for a $400 emergency. People have to and will be forced to move for jobs. And to Gavin's point, that happened here in 08. In 08, it was very clear, prior to that, Bend, there was an article in The Economist. It was called Boomtown USA.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an article about Bend in terms of the building boom. And there were developers who had come into Bend to really take advantage of that boom. And this is where when the bottom fell out, a lot of those folks who weren't from here had to leave.
You could even start to make the point that even the people that are from here will have to leave, because as you're saying, self-preservation, if the community doesn't have any jobs to support you and your family being here, it's your duty to make sure that you and your family survive. And that might mean moving to Portland or moving to LA or wherever there is any sort of industry that can support you and your family. So if you really enjoy living here, then support the town. So going into that, how does well, first, for businesses that are seeing this, because most people end up watching podcasts are entrepreneurs in town. So let's start on the business side. So as a business, how do like, this is really cool. Okay. How do I sign up? And also, wait, we need to back up really quick. How does SOS Bend work? How does it put money into the economy?
Sure. So the basic concept is one around store credit, or better well-known term is gift cards. So and just a little bit of background as to how we got here. When we had the first meeting with some organizations from town, the Chamber of Commerce, City of Bend, Deschutes County, this was a little over 2.5 weeks ago, we were trying to figure out how could we bridge financing to local businesses ahead of stimulus cash coming in. And we were considering different routes, and then we ran the numbers and we crunched them for Deschutes County, and it was clear that it's significant. Backing into some assumptions, you have about 300 million of payroll every month across the county, and taking the unemployment levels of 08, 09, you could have a shortfall of 35 to 50 million a month. So the numbers became meaningful very quickly. So we thought about, well, what could we do, and how could we steer the conversation? And as Matt mentioned, a significant portion of the economy is around consumption, and people still have cash, you just can't go out and spend it. So to bridge those two things, why don't we look at a system that we could set up around allowing people to purchase now and redeem later, and ensuring up the businesses that they love, that they support, that they love going to, that they value the service of. And that's the core concept around this. And what we've built is a platform that enables it's a meeting place for both merchants and for their customers to come and allow this store credit to occur. It's not a financial platform. We're not involved in taking payments. We have a third party, very reputable, that does all of that. And as you mentioned before, it's a non-commercial enterprise. It's driven by the community, but we've pulled in a lot of very talented people to build this in a relatively short period of time, and it's a high quality platform that enables a secure transaction between customers and merchants to get that cash flowing.
Okay, great. So basically, sign me up. I'm a business owner, and let's say I own a ski shop in town. So how do I do that?
I'll give you a quick little demo here. I'm not going to go through it as the entire process. We've got a video on the page here. And by the way, I'm assuming you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that walks through the entire flow here, and I don't want to actually enter any credentials to try to claim a business here. So I'd point any viewers, go through the video on the page. They can walk through it. Mm-hmm. But it's at this point we are. It's like any marketplace. We have on Monday of this week we just launched what I'll call the phase 1 launch, and that is out for businesses to come on and register. Like any marketplace, if consumers are coming to a marketplace and there's nothing for them to buy, then they're not going to come back. So our first job here, and the first push here, which I would tell the audience, is it's important for businesses to first come on and register. We will then be, for the second phase, doing the consumer launch after the businesses have registered and signed up, so on and so forth.
So basically, share any Bend residents that are watching us that want to help their favorite businesses. Go in and check it out. And if you see some on there that you want on there, please forward them the link that will be in this. That will be in the podcast show notes to them. Basically, sosbend.com. Get them to go there to register their business. Because right now, you guys, I saw you have a number of them in there. I think you already have 100 or so.
Yeah, we have. I think we're up to almost 125, maybe 150 today, after 2.5 days of being live. So, the focus here is let's get as many businesses as we can on this, and keep in mind from the consumer side when we do that, I want to put out some numbers. Internally, we have some general goals. I would say if let's assume that Bend has a permanent population of 100,000 people, if 1% of Bend residents just come out to the platform when we launch the consumer side and put in $50 across 25 different businesses. That's over $1 million injected directly into the small business economy here. That's just from 1% of the Bend population.
Yeah.
And
I think of all the things. I mean, $50, you basically are getting yourself for when this lifts up, you have a date night that you're booking for your favorite restaurant, or maybe a bike, a helmet that you need. I mean, the list goes on the businesses that you love here. And that's just for $50. I mean, I think it'd be easy for somebody to be like, I'm going to help the community out and just put 100, maybe 200, 300, depending on what you can do. But you're going to end up, helping these businesses survive, keeping your interests intact because you don't have a great exodus of Bend. Your schools are still supported. The healthcare system is still around because you and your friends ended up actually doing this. And then at the end, you get to use it. You get to have you get these. So it's not just throwing money into the wind. It's actually something that will come back to you, and you get to have a great philanthropic feeling of it as well. When are you guys looking to launch it for? What's the target date for launching to consumers?
Well, two answers there on that front. Our target right now is for next week.
Okay.
I'm giving you two answers because what is so critical and important here, and I think Gavin mentioned this earlier in terms of we're all stakeholders in our community, and it is important that there's trust. That is probably one of the most important aspects too. We've already had some businesses that have come out and tried to sign on, and they've said, "Oh, is this thing for real, or is this a scam?" So on and so forth. And it's important to note that this is something that we've had phenomenal support and been doing this in conjunction with the chamber, with the city, with the county, a number of other organizations here locally that they've given tremendous support as we've gone through this process. And the trust aspect, it's important to make sure we do all that we can to ensure that the dollars that consumers actually buy here get into the hands of the rightful business owners. And so we go through our own verification process as part of this. The chamber is helping us as well, providing additional verification for the businesses or the individuals who are signing on as a business owner to make sure that there is this circle of trust across our community. And I think that's an important piece because so much today, whether it's our institutions, our information, so on and so forth, but there's a lack of trust out there. And we're really trying to take a focused approach of we have to get this right. We take a big responsibility as being members of this community that this is financial transaction information, and we can't screw that up. No.
And I saw how you guys were doing it through the demo of how a business signs up and everything, and it seems to be pretty foolproof. And then the money, it does not go into a place where you guys end up holding it. It basically goes directly into the bank account of the business, which so you can know that this money is going from, your credit card to the business's account, so they can keep going. Which, by the way, they really, really desperately need right now because things like the PPP Act that ran out of money as of this morning. So the $368 billion they put aside, my business got a note, and so did many others that are saying it was basically a long email saying we're sorry, but we ran out of money. Not to say that Congress won't go back to put more in them. I feel like they will, but that's going to take a lot of time. And as we were looking at the graph before of the cash flow and how long that actually ends up lasting for a business and how long they have, even if they get it passed in the next 2 to 3 weeks, which would be fast for them, if we don't do something right now to help them, it's going to be too late. Like, these businesses have to pay, like, their landlords, they have to pay like all these certain vendor fees and all these things that they have. And we're not, there's sometimes this notion I feel with people who aren't into the entrepreneurial world that, like, business owners, they have like this big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that we just pull from all the time. And I'm just like, I wish it was like that. If that was the case, show me the rainbow. I'm gonna sign up for that. But that's just not the case. we pour our hearts and souls into this thing, working nonstop. Like these business owners, every business owner I know of is pulling at least like 10-hour days, most around 12, 14, sometimes 16, I've been hearing, just to get this to stay afloat, to make it through this. And a lot of them are banking. They're really, really banking on that PPP.
But I would even argue on that, and this is, I don't want to go too far off on a tangent here, but back to that graph, when you say, business owners today, in the midst of this crisis, are busting their asses to survive. The fact that even in good times, the average in this country is 16 days, 27 days of cash runway, so on and so forth, for people who are working tremendously hard, that make up the backbone of this economy. That is unacceptable in the wealthiest country on earth. That's in a good time, and we're in bad times.
Well, we're not set up for this. We aren't set up as the United States of America to be going. We're designed to always be open. This has never happened before. So all of a sudden, to say the economy is shut down, we don't have any airbags. There is no protection from this. This is one of the airbags. This is one of the medicines to help, is by injecting money in, because this has never happened. Like, this is really, so anybody's like, oh, it'll bounce back, everything will be a V shape. It's like, things will come back to normal, but if we don't end up doing anything, how you really like downtown Bend and First Friday? Well, the majority of it's going to be boarded up, literally boarded up. It's going to be depressing, and you're not even going to want to go there. And those people that ended up having those businesses, they most likely have moved away. We're talking about some real dire stuff, and I don't mean to be a doomsday or anything like that, but I just think some people need to wake up. The people that, now the people who are affected by this and they've been laid off and everything, which there's been thousands in our town, and it continues to climb. I'm preaching to the choir right now, but then there's that echelon of people that just, they think they're in this bubble. And I'm saying this because I've spoken to them, and I haven't really, I've gotten through to a few, but graphs like this and what you guys are doing, I think helps point the picture, the stake that they have, the community, watching the entire community go to the crap. Like, go on $100 shopping spree on SOS Bend and help keep this town alive, because the government isn't doing it. Which is why I also am a big fan of what you guys are doing. It shows us what can happen in a free market too, which is pretty awesome. But you guys aren't even getting any money from it, so it's just out of the goodness of your heart. What do you think would be well, I know that if 1% were to put in $1 million in the business, if they did $50, what do you guys think? What's your goal? What's, like, 1% would be great to bring in $1 million, but what are you really hoping to see?
I don't think we have, there are no targets. There's no definitive amount. Because it's unknown, and we don't know how long this goes on for. I mentioned before some numbers that we ran in the past per month in terms of the consequences of redundancies, etc., on a monthly basis. But I think the message is more, here is something you can do. Here is our real goal is, if you feel hopeless, you're hearing all this news, you're at home, you want to do something, you're not too sure what to do. We just wanted to create an environment where this is a call to action. Maybe you're not in a position to spend as much as you would have in a pre-COVID crisis, but think about what you would have normally spent and try and get some of that back into the circulation of the local economy, and think of our community. And so it's a way for everybody to contribute. And if there was a frustration out there as to not knowing what to do, the need is great and the time is now.
Yeah, well said. Well, I'm incredibly impressed by what you guys have put together here. I'm very, very happy to push it out to my listeners, and I'll be continuously doing posts across all of our different social media channels talking about it. And we do a lot of marketing. About 15% of our clients are here in town, so they'll be pushing it as well, as I was telling them about it. So You'll be seeing it pop up on social there. But if you are actually only in a position to give $10 to this, which is completely understandable, you also have a voice. So you also have social media accounts. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this. You have a LinkedIn profile, you most likely. You have a Facebook, Instagram. You have all these things. You have Twitter. How many sort of outlets do you have at your disposal? Do you have any idea how much voice, how much power that has? If you were to take this and give $10 because that's what you could, you can go a lot further as well by just sharing it and putting a meaningful endorsement behind it. So Bend community, if you guys can take this and whatever you can put in, great. Even if it's like 100 or 1,000, you're going above and beyond. But your endorsement, your recommendation, you being an influencer, is one of the most powerful things to make a 1% $1 million a afterthought, because I think this could easily be a potential of bringing in tens, maybe even $100 million into this economy and keeping it going. But it's going to happen from us all sharing it and getting the word out. If we just do it ourselves and we don't tell anybody else about it, then it's just going to get that $10. But if you guys share us on every platform you can because you care about Ben and you care about it succeeding, then this is going to, here we have the answer. We have the medicine for it, thanks to you guys. Do you guys have any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have two. One is that Matt and myself are here, but there's a significant team behind this who have pulled crazy hours over the last 2 weeks to get this up and running. It's a fairly significant and sophisticated piece of technology that's been put together in a very short period of time, in addition to awareness that's been created around marketing and efforts like this. So just a big shout out to the team. A lot of people there. Won't go through all the names. And the second point I would make is there is a lot of negativity at the moment. The way we're talking, it's very doomsdayish, and it's the spirit of this is more optimistic. It's more hopeful. It's a message of something to do, a call to action to avoid those scenarios that we're talking about. So it's about community, trust, and avoiding that negativity. So let's all get together and avoid that.
And just to tack on the end there, I could not agree more with Gavin's comment in terms of the team of people, and in particular, it's important, I think, to call out that many of the folks who have volunteered to help on this are not in good cash positions themselves, that they're putting in their hours and their time to help others. And that goes back to this community and the positives of, wow, people come together. People want to help and they want to be there, and it's easy to look at all the negative out of this, but I think it's important to look at how can the new normal look like in terms of our communities, our community finance, our structures, how we work with one another, how we treat one another. How does that look differently than when it was before we went into this crisis? And I think that's what we all should be looking at as well, as we have an opportunity to actually create something a lot better on the other side. Even though we're in a really dark period right now, there can be a lot of amazing things that frankly level the playing field and improve. Our underlying goal is, I don't want to see those small businesses in good times have a short cash buffer like that. How do we change that economic model?
Well, this is one way to actually do it when we get the traction. Not only that, but Bend, as you guys share this, and if we prove that people will do it, and if we prove that there is good in people, which I firmly believe there is, then this can actually become a beacon of hope for communities all over the world. So we're ground zero right here. You guys came up with a potential medicine. It is a medicine. It's just on whether or not the people take it or not. And if we do, and if we actually push this and mean it and put it on all the social channels that we possibly can to help make sure that our town survives, then this can then be replicated all over and make many towns all over the world survive. So it's more than just us here. This is a big test to make sure that we can do something outside of government intervention.
I was on the phone with folks from India this morning. We've gotten outreach from Europe, from Australia. Our first job is we've got to make it successful here. But I just want to do a shout out for you as well. Look, as a small business owner yourself right now, I know that it's not easy for you, and you're dealing with your firefights day to day. And there's just the mental aspects that business owners and the pressure that you and everyone is under is everyone is in the same boat. And the fact that you took your time out of the day here to help push this, I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so as listeners of the show know that I get vulnerable all the time, and I'll just say that what Matt's saying is true. We talked yesterday, and he caught me at a time where I've been going with rocket fuel. I mean, I'm changing everything that I can over here. We've been pivoting a lot. We're going on offense. I actually see us in a position to start growing, which just blows my mind. Because my team and I have just been grind. But man, he caught me at a time that happens probably once every other day or so, where I'm just kind of sitting back going, holy shit, is this actually happening? Like, are these conversations I'm having? I talk to business owners all across the country all day, every day, and I'm just listening to them losing their minds here in Bend and all over, just like not knowing what to do. They're scared, and that fear hits me at times as well. So to be having that kind of fear, knowing that the PPP is you didn't get it on this round, and then all of a sudden to start seeing that your bank account is getting $10 here, $100 there, $60 here, you're like, that would make those anxieties, that mental health go up so high. Just those little numbers coming into the bank account, it would give owners such a feeling of hope. So that's another thing that we're giving, or you guys are giving, is this is a big beam of hope. And I thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure. sosbend.com. That's where you guys can get your business registered, and then soon start supporting these businesses as soon as next week. And keep on sharing it as much as you can. Thanks again, guys, for being on, and I'm thrilled for this. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate it.